listening to the Good Enough Wellness Podcast. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Emily.
And we're passionate about holistic wellness that real people with real lives can achieve.
We see you out there striving for perfection, but we want you to know that good enough can be good enough.
Before we get started, everything we talk about in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Always talk to your healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, medication, or supplements. So, I'm Kayla King. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. I'm seeing virtual clients through my one-on-one consultations at my business, Kayla King Wellness. I live in Northwest Pennsylvania with my husband Garrett on a small-scale hobby dairy farm. Yeah, we drink lots and lots of raw milk. I'm really passionate about regenerative agriculture and connecting health, healing, and wellness with God's perfect design for our lives. A lot of what got me into nutritional therapy and going down that path was I listened to a podcast with a nutritional therapy practitioner, and part of that podcast was they talked a lot about hormonal birth control, which I was on at the time, and about its effects on health and fertility. So I knew that I needed to get off the birth control pill, so I took my last birth control pill in December of 2019. Going into 2020, was off the birth control pill, and my period was missing, and I started gaining lots of weight, and just lots of issues with coming off of birth control. I did try some health things to get things back on track, but nothing really seemed to work. I found the pro-metabolic community through Emilie in 2021, and then I gained even more weight, but I did start to get my periods back, and then I moved that summer in with my in-laws in a not great situation. Love my in-laws, nothing against them.
A loving situation.
It was a very loving situation, but very stressful situation, and period went missing again, and then in 2023, Garrett and I were talking about wanting to start a family, but with missing period, how was I going to do that? So we started talking about career changes for me. I currently work at a Chick-fil-A, and it's not really conducive to having children or running a farm. So we talked about me becoming a nutritional therapy practitioner, so I would have a job I could do from home while we have kids, and our finances and time all lined up really well for me to go through the course in 2023. So I did that in May of 2023. I started the nutritional therapy practitioner course and graduated in March of 2024.
We're keeping that.
And then, so yeah, that's what got me into nutritional therapy, was a lot of my own fertility journey. And I'm excited to help others find health and healing, as well as stay home with my someday kids.
Yay. Yeah, so I'm Emily, and I grew up on a dairy farm, but right now I live on a creek in a cute little town south of Erie, PA, and I live with my husband Matt and our 5 feral children, and I love them so much. I could cry about it if I think about it too much. And I've been into wellness since I was 15, and I've spent much of my spare time reading, listening, and learning about what the next thing is, and that was until I hit burnout, and I had to rethink how I viewed everything about wellness and the whole wellness sphere. And that's where this podcast came from. And if I had taken better notes, I would have like years for you of everything that happened. But rest assured, in the last 15 years, I have had a stressful teenage years, which turned into me getting married and then lickety-split pregnant. And then I had 3 babies right in a row, and that was, looking back on pictures, I'm like, oh, it's such a lovely time, and I was like, no, that was a hard time. That was a really hard time. We're definitely going to talk about minerals more, but for sure, I lost so many, and that led to a period of time where I could barely get out of bed because I had anxiety so bad that it was debilitating, and it became quite depressing, and crawled out of that through supplements and a lot of prayer, and went on to have two more babies, and hit burnout again because you cannot sustain yourself on supplements, as it turns out. So for sure, we'll probably get into more nitty gritty on that, but that's just kind of a brief overview of my whole life. So, yeah, I guess now here we are recording a podcast and not really know what we're doing, but we're pressing on, and yeah.
Yay, we're doing it.
We're doing the thing.
So, Emily and I met when I was 15.
I was 14.
Yep, and she was 14. Yep, yeah. We're a year apart.
Almost exactly.
2 days.
Yep.
So how we met was at a curriculum fair. We were both homeschooled, and my mom was there, and she obviously brought us kids along. So my older brother Matt, was there, and across the aisle from us was Emily's family, and Emily was manning the booth for her mom. And my brother said to me, "Hey, you should go be friends with that girl. I think she's in the Sunlight catalog."
The way I still give her a hard time about this, because I say, "You're only friends because he made you," which is partially true, but it's okay.
I mean, he made me introduce myself, which was tough for me because I am very introverted.
Yes.
But I was like, "Hey, yeah, I can talk to a girl who likes to read."
Turns out I don't, so.
Archery.
This is the clincher of that story, though, is it was my sister in the Sunlight catalog. It wasn't even me. But I married him anyway, so it worked out.
Yeah. So, yeah. She was only friends with me for my brother. That's what I like to say. She had ulterior motives for being my friend. But
now we're friends for life, and we have to stay friends because it would make really awkward Sunday dinners if we weren't. So,
for sure. And then she's been an integral part of my wellness journey. She's always been like, "Hey, I found this on Instagram. You should check it out. Hey, I heard about this podcast. I think you would really like it. Hey, have you ever heard of X, Y, and Z?" And then I do the deep dive because I can be a little obsessive. and then I take it too far and I become an NTP. So
it works out for all of us, honestly.
Yes.
Yeah, I like to dabble here and there, and it helps to have an obsessive friend who doesn't have kids yet that you can be like, "Hey, have you heard of this?" And then she's like, comes back 2 weeks later like, "So I figured out that
here's the guide."
Yeah, basically. And that's it. You should have a friend like that. That's a good friend to have.
Yeah. And everyone needs a friend who inspires them and says, "Hey, have you heard of this? What about this? From what I've seen, this."
Yeah.
In my experience, this. And I feel like we have not a lot of overlapping expertise.
I would agree with
that. The things that I have really poured my effort and attention into tend to be different things than she does.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a lot of overlapping expertise. We just have enough in all the areas that together we're like the total package.
For real, though. And now you get to sit with us and listen to our, "Hey, have you ever heard of this? Because this is so cool." Yeah. And I guess maybe one of the downfalls of having obsessive personalities is that you can take things too far pretty easily. And that's kind of this whole concept of horseshoes, hand grenades, and your health is you don't have to be perfect to hit the target.
Yeah.
Because the target's big, and the target's always moving too, which is a difficult thing. You can set yourself up for success by having like really foundational things. Perfection isn't your goal. Me personally, my goal is resiliency, and you don't need perfection to achieve resiliency. Thank the Lord, because as I said, I have 5 kids, and me time isn't really a big thing. In fact, we're begging and borrowing and stealing time in order to record this. But do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, so I think resilience is such a huge part of wellness in general, and it's such an integral part of the good enough wellness because resiliency is what helps us live real lives.
Yeah.
Without the resiliency, we're fragile, we're breakable. If we experience one bite of gluten, we are in bed for 2 weeks. And no one wants to live a life like that. You want to be able to live a life where you can have pizza with your friends on the weekend.
Yeah.
And you might experience some symptoms, but you're back up on your feet by Monday in time for work.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that if you're not resilient right now that you're doing something wrong, but I think it should always be the goal of wellness,
Yeah.
quote unquote, to achieve resiliency.
Well, and I think with resiliency, a lot of time that secret ingredient is time.
Yeah.
Just for example, so anecdotal, but I think that's how we get a lot of our information is yesterday here, it was so humid. You were in the shade sweating. And we saw 91 here and maybe higher. I stopped checking after that because I didn't really want to know. Previously, last summer and pretty much any summer before that, I would have been a mess, just feeling like I was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Like, super dramatic, yeah, but like, that feeling of like I could pass out at any second and I'm not doing anything.
I completely get that.
Yeah, yesterday it was hot, I was sweaty, felt fine.
You were okay?
I felt fine.
Yeah.
I was still functioning, maybe a little less than 100% because I didn't get to sleep in time, but that happens when you have a bunch of kids and you love your husband, so it works out. But just that resiliency to be able to like carry on with life, and you can bale hay and you can have babies and you can be up late with your teenagers and you can do all these things that are they are the things that make life worth living.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still be a functioning human being at the end of the day, or at least the next day.
Yeah, resiliency is really the cushion that allows you to live a real life. So there are times when you are really fragile. For example, before I started listening to a lot of health podcasts and learning about wellness and diving down that road of whole foods and nutrition, I experienced a lot of anxiety. And so during that time, I was extremely fragile.
Yes.
Any little thing that wrecked my idea of what an event was going to be like. So if I thought we were going to be doing X, Y, and Z, and my husband said, change of plans, now we're going to do A, B, and C, I had a meltdown. Yeah. I would hide in a room, in a bathroom stall, and cry because I couldn't handle it. Yeah. I had no resiliency. I was very fragile. Once I started working on nutrition, especially blood sugar regulation and supporting like the adrenals and just really working on eating enough and eating frequently.
Yeah.
And that gave me the cushion then that, if I thought we were going to do X, Y, Z and my husband said, nope, we're going to do A, B, and C, now I can say, okay, I can do that. Because I have the cushion to do that. And it didn't happen overnight. It's not like one day I woke up and I ate enough and now I was resilient. Yes. That took me a couple years to get to that point. And there are still times where if it's been 6 hours since I ate last, or if I am super frazzled about something and he says, oh, now we're going to do A, B, and C, I will snap. Yeah. Yes. But that's not the usual scenario for me anymore.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more resilient and a lot less fragile.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love the concept of using it as a cushion. It's like eventually if you use that cushion too much, it's going to be completely flat. Yes, yeah. And you got to build it back up. But like I get into bad habits where our light automatically goes off in our bedroom at 11, and it's that like you should have been in bed. You should be asleep. Like,
lights out.
Us parenting ourselves over here.
Yeah.
And there was a couple weeks there where, like, Matt was working late, and, like, when he works late, like, everything just gets shifted later, and he's amazing. He helps with bedtime and everything. He does bedtime, let's be honest. But, and then I'm kind of, like, up waiting, and I'm waiting for him to come back down, and then it just, like, gets pushed later and later and later. And then we're in bed at, like, midnight and 1 o'clock, and we did that for a few weeks, and I do not recommend that, friends, because I was starting to just lose my mind. Like, I do not have hardly any anxiety anymore, but I was starting to see that, like, reoccur. I was relying on caffeine to function, which is not usually my MO. And I was starting to have meltdowns about things, and, like, I one thing that I notice when I don't get enough sleep is my creative energy just tanks, which really sucks when you're starting to, like, have this conversation with your friend about, like, we should start a podcast, and then all of a sudden you're like, I have no ideas, I don't want to talk about this, I'm not okay. And quite frankly, I'm not a very nice mom when I'm like that either. So
yeah,
so using, like, that picture of resiliency being a cushion, being like, I need to, like, pack some peanuts back in here to, like, to create that buffer again. I need to make sure that I'm having minerals in my water, and I need to make sure that I'm actually doing my magnesium, and I need to make sure that I'm doing things that are good enough to get me boosted back up.
Right. Yeah. And I think we've all seen those memes where it's like, are you a raging monster, or do you need to go to bed early?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Or my favorite, a little spicy, but it's not spiritual warfare. You just haven't eaten, and you've only had iced coffee today. And I'm like, ooh.
It me.
Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's talk about spirituality and the concept of being good enough. One thing that I had to come to terms with is that there was a time when I thought that if my body failed, that it meant I wasn't being a good steward of it.
Yeah.
And while I think there are some nuanced truth to that, I don't think that's scriptural, and I don't think that's true. I think that every body is a good body because God made it and He loves it so much. And trying to reach perfection feels a lot like trying to reach perfection to gain your own salvation, and that's no bueno either.
Yeah. So, like, basically, the cross is good enough.
Yeah,
Grace is good enough.
Yeah.
And that is really important to this concept of, like, you got to do what you can do. You can't work your way to the healthiest body or to heaven.
Yeah.
You have to rely on the things that have been provided for you. And going back to, like, feeling like if your body failed you, you were a bad steward, and that God made our bodies good enough. Like, I tell people all the time, God made our bodies to be self-healing machines. He knew what He was doing when He put all of the systems and organs in place. Yeah. And He knew what He was doing when He put certain nutrients in certain foods. He knew that if you ate the right foods, and I guess not the right foods, but if you ate the foods He created in the ways that they were created to be consumed, then He will meet you in that. Like, if you do your part, He'll do His part. And sometimes your part looks like just eating.
Yeah.
And sometimes your part looks like eating all organic and grass-fed and dialing in the macronutrients. And sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And He'll meet you in both places.
And it's both, right? I think sometimes when we try to approach balance, we do it the exact wrong way, where we're looking at it like, okay, balance means we have to hit dead center. We have to, whereas balance, if you ever, like, watch somebody like walk across a tightrope or whatever, they're kind of doing this like sway back and forth thing where they're tipping here and they're tipping there, but they're always returning to neutral, but they're not staying there. It's not a target that they're trying to maintain. It's a
within parameters.
Exactly. Yes.
I was kind of thinking about that when we were talking about resiliency and the cushion too. It's like, it's not that you want to be at the end of your cushion on either direction.
Yeah.
You know, you can go back and forth. It's almost like a spring.
You
know, yes. It's like you can max that spring out in both directions, but eventually you'll find like your happy medium.
Right.
But you have the capacity to go both directions then, with that spring.
That's true. I like that too. That's a good analogy.
All right, so what you can expect to hear from us in this podcast is a lot of nuanced conversations. You know, we might talk about nutrition one week, movement another week, child raising another week.
Ooh, who's going to talk about that?
Probably me. I'm the expert with my lack of children.
Yeah, we want to cover everything because that's life, right? Like, if you want to look at, you can't just look at nutrition holistically and just say, like, we look at nutrition holistically. If you want to look at it holistically, we're going to look at the whole picture. We want to talk about raw dairy, and we want to talk about Katie Bowman, and we want to talk about
marriage.
Do you know who Katie Bowman is? Because
you gotta know who Katie Bowman is.
You can sit at our table.
Yeah.
You can sit with the cool kids. But we don't want to give you rules. We don't want to give you who are we? Don't listen to us, you know. We don't know the rules because we don't know your body, and right. We want you to find center, and we want you to find when you can get yourself to a point of resiliency, and when you can, you know, have your stores filled up, it creates space for you to figure out who you are, because there's so much less noise, and we really want that for you. I assume it's going to be mostly women listening, so we want that for our women and stuff, but you know, the men too. The men need this also.
Yeah. We want you to know that you're best, even if that looks like a pizza, even if it looks like Chick-fil-A, even if it looks like Taco Bell on some days. I know, I love Taco Bell. That's my dirty little secret, because I really love fast food.
Oh gosh, we won't tell anybody.
We want you to know that all that stuff in the bigger picture of wellness is good enough.
Yeah.
The things that you're doing, if it's your best, it's good enough.
I think the Lord really honors that. I like to say a lot when somebody asks me, like, well, how do you approach this? And they say, well, this is what I do. And they go, well, what about this and this? And I go, you know what? I do this part, and Jesus will bless the rest.
Yeah. And that's also, like, not putting our heads in the sand.
Yeah.
Not saying, like, I am only going to eat Taco Bell and expect Jesus to bless the rest.
I would never say that, because I don't believe in restrictive eating.
So true. That sounds like such a restrictive diet.
It really does, though. They only have the same 5 ingredients on the menu, so we're aiming for balance here.
There is space for the Taco Bell.
There is, because what do we say? Fed is best.
That's right. And that applies to babies and adults.
Yep.
So yeah, expect a lot of nuanced conversation. I think that's a lot of what we're going to have. We're going to cover a wide variety of topics. We're not going to sell you a supplement or a powder.
No, thank you.
Or a program. I mean, you're welcome to buy my program.
You should buy her program. She's very good.
But it's not a, like, if you buy this program.
This is not a sales pitch.
Yeah, you're going to change your life.
If anything, we are
I'll
pitching...
get you the results you want. But
if anything, we're pitching to you coming at life with a different perspective, and, you know, being satisfied.
We want you to find joy and peace
with
food and your bodies.
Peace over everything.
And that's all these conversations are. How can you find joy and peace in every aspect of wellness?
Yeah. So, Kayla, what's the TLDR?
You are more than your physical health and body.
Our pursuit of health shouldn't be about perfection. It should be about resiliency.
Resiliency is what will allow you to live a normal life and still be a functioning human.
Jesus honors our efforts.
And we want you to feel joy and peace in your journey. Thanks for listening to the Good Enough Wellness Podcast. To learn more about me and my one-on-one packages, you can join my mailing list and follow me on Instagram at Kayla King Wellness.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Good Enough Wellness podcast feed wherever you listen to podcasts. You're not going to want to miss an episode.
Join our community over on Instagram at Good Enough Wellness Podcast to learn about upcoming episodes and to interact with the Good Enough community.
The Good Enough Wellness Podcast, because good enough can be good enough.
Well, that's good enough for me.
Me too.